Hey everybody and welcome to Chairman of the Board. Today I'm looking at Teotihuacan, which is the newest game by Daniele Tascini. He's one of my favourite designers, and this game is kind of promoted as the spiritual successor to Tzolk'in the Mayan calendar, which happens to be one of my favourite games of all time. In fact, it's in my top 3 at the moment, so it's a game that I was really looking forward to, wildly anticipating for a long time to come, and I finally got it and got it to the table. This game is, it has kind of similarities to Tzolk'in in a very loose way, but it does feel very different. Obviously, it shares that same theme of that kind of ancient South American kind of vibe to it. But yeah, a very different game. I'd say this one is slightly on the heavier side, but again, the mechanisms are very different. So obviously with Tzolk'in you've got the kind of worker placement. This one works very differently in a kind of rondelle. So you've got these different level workers represented by dice. They start at level 1 and they basically move clockwise around these board, activating these different areas. Every time you take one of those main actions, you level up your dice, so from 1 to 2 to 3, and each time they do that they get more powerful and get more powerful rewards, as they correlate, getting stronger and stronger. So also it has this different thing where if you line up your dice by having more than one of your workers on a certain spot, you get better rewards that way too. A bit like Marco Polo, which is another game by him. So a bit more familiarity there. But again, this is a very different game because not only are you allowed to kind of activate these main actions by moving 1, 2 or 3 spaces around that rondelle, you can choose to lock in your dice and choose to worship, which gets you loads and loads of different rewards, such as they might give you cocoa, which is kind of your main kind of currency for the game. You're using that to activate the different spaces because you have to pay by landing on those spots. Also, they're kind of used for everything really, to feed your workers and stuff like that. But I kind of love that choice of having to basically use that basic action and level up your workers, or maybe sometimes take an opportunity to take one of those worship spots and get like a particular bonus that you're after. And also every time you use one of those worship actions, you kind of have to sacrifice that worker because you have to spend a whole turn unlocking your workers once they are all kind of committed, or kind of be a bit less efficient and unlock them when only some of your workers are worshipping, if that makes sense. A bit kind of more housekeeping and upkeep with this game than your traditional Euro, I would say. I'll say that's where kind of most of the weight comes in, because it is a bit more difficult to keep track of things in this one, because there is a lot of synergy between the mechanisms. So for example, if you activate a certain spot, it might make you climb a certain temple, that might let you level up your dice, which might get you a certain reward and stuff like that. So there's a bit of housekeeping to keep up with, and it is sometimes quite easy to lose track of everything, but if you keep on top of things and the more familiar you get with the game, it does become easier and easier. Those temples are something that kind of remind me of Tzolk'in, very familiar in that game. Basically, you've got these 3 temples. In fact, you've got 5 temples in Teotihuacan, where you've got one temple where it basically gets you resources, one that gets you cocoa, and one that gets you victory points. And as you get to certain spots in those temples, well, you can choose to spend certain resources to get different little benefits as well. So loads to keep track of there. The kind of main kind of focal point of this game is building this very cool, Aztecan, well, I don't know if that's the right word, like Aztec pyramid in the center of the board by placing these tiles. And you're trying to match these tiles and you're spending resources to build a new layer, getting victory points in return, climbing the temples and stuff like that. But yeah, a very cool, cool idea, and a very kind of nice a visual element to the game that really does look cool and develops as the game goes on. So it's got that kind of progression to the game. But every time also you build on that pyramid, you go up a pyramid track, which also gets you points, in return at every kind of they call it an eclipse, which is basically your round tracker. There's 3 eclipses in the game, and every eclipse phase you kind of score for a certain different criteria. So yeah, overall this game is a really great Euro game, and what you'd expect by Tascini. Loads of decisions here, loads of different routes to go down. Also these worker placement spots, or they're not worker placement spots, I say these action spots. There's loads of variability in the box because you've got loads of different tiles which kind of cover the main ones on the board if you want to try something a bit different. and stuff like that. So there's loads of variability there, loads of different bonus tiles and stuff like that. The decisions in this game, there's plentiful. You're going to be constantly kind of racking your brain about what you want to do, what resources you want to collect, which kind of technologies you want to invest in to make your goes a bit more efficient and a bit more powerful. How you want to line your dice up, when you want to level your dice up, because once they get to level 6, you have to basically that worker dies and it goes back to the number 1 spot, and you get like a reward. So you might have to like unlock another worker, or you get victory points, or more cocoa, or stuff like that. You can climb up on the temples and stuff. So loads of decisions to make that way, and that also advances the round tracker as well. So the time really does kind of tick along quite nicely once the game gets going, and the time kind of does run away with you. It seems to me like all the different strategies you can take are very well balanced. Something I didn't mention as well is the fact you can collect these masks, which work in a kind of set collection way. The more masks you get, the more points you're going to get each eclipse. And that's a good way to get points as well, but something you really have to commit to. So another kind of strategy to go down there as well. The mechanisms in the game are pretty simple in theory. You've got one of 3 things you can do. You can choose to worship, you can choose to use one of those main actions, or you can choose to basically collect cocoa, depending on how many people are on a certain action spot. So you've got to kind of keep your keep your little engine running, and make sure you've got enough cocoa to keep feeding your actions. I say the game probably takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to play, which feels about the sweet spot for the game. It is a little bit heavy than your traditional Euro, I would say. Slightly above that, but certainly nothing that's completely overwhelming. But there is a lot to keep track of. You want to be staying on top of those temples, trying to keep on those tracks, add to the pyramid, as well as keeping your workers leveling up and stuff like that. So there is a lot to think about here. In a very kind of succinct amount of time, but the right kind of time frame for this game. It definitely doesn't outstay its welcome, and as I said, it does really start to kind of gather momentum as everyone is leveling up their workers. The uptime of the game is certainly not an issue at all, because everyone's just going to be taking one action at a time, and it does tick along quite nicely. As I said, replayability is absolutely great with this one because of the variability in the game. So much variation in the tiles and different setups and stuff like that too. Also different starting tiles, which is a bit reminiscent of Tzolk'in, where you get to start with basically your choice of little rewards, such as like resources or cocoa or victory points or climbing up the temple tracks and stuff like that. Visually, the game does kind of appear a bit cluttered when you initially look at the game, because there's so much going on, so many different tracks and so many different temples and stuff like that. But, once you kind of know what each of those different spots on the board represent, it's really not too much information to digest, and it does kind of fit into place. I do like the kind of minimalistic artwork of the game. It does really feel very thematic, and it does have a kind of very different kind of color palette than your traditional board game. And I do really like it. Component quality, completely fine. In fact, very good. No complaints there at all. Good quality pieces. No complaints whatsoever with the components. The theme, again, this is I do love the kind of Aztec theme. It's really a great theme. But again, this is a Euro. It's not a thematic game, but it's pasted on and it's got a very nice skin to it. One that I really enjoy. Setup and teardown time. There's a little bit to it. You've got to place a lot of these different discovery tiles, which are kind of random little reward perks that you can get, which give you kind of short-term or long-term bonuses. But yeah, you can choose. You've got to kind of lay those out randomly all over the board, and so there's a bit of setup there, but nothing too bad to worry about. Maybe just a little bit longer than average. But yeah, overall, this game is it's another fantastic game by Tascini. He's definitely becoming one of my absolute favourite designers. I look forward to anything he puts out, and I'll probably buy anything that he puts out because he just has one hit after another. This game has really had a lot of buzz this year. It's what kind of the hot thing is at the moment, and it's really does kind of stand up to that kind of hype it's given, because it is a really, really good game. Loads to think about. I love the kind of pyramid aspect to it as you're building those different layers, paying more resources you're building up, but getting more resources in return. It's a real point salad of a game. I love point salads. You get points for pretty much everything, but it definitely doesn't feel like you're just going through the motions with this. You do have to plan your turns carefully, and the way that, as I said, the kind of chain reactions and synergies between doing certain actions is very, very rewarding when you get a big bonus by doing a certain action. But you might climb up this tempo that makes you climb up that tempo, which lets you buy this. So there's loads of kind of synergies there, which I really love about board games. One of my kind of favorite things to look forward to is the ability to string combos together and line up a few moves in advance as well, because you've got to be very careful about how you use those workers and make sure you're not leveling them up too early, but making sure they are leveling up so you're getting those stronger rewards as well. So yeah, an absolutely fantastic game. If you've played any of his games before and you like them, this is definitely one to check out. As I said, the admin of the game and the upkeep is a bit more, a bit heavier than usual, but again, nothing too much to worry about there. The game does come with a very good solo variant as well, which works very well. I really enjoyed playing the solo version of the game. It works, perfectly fine. Again, a little bit more admin on top of that, which just to keep things flowing. But again, no real issues there if you're into the hobby. And if you like these kind of games, you're not going to really be worried about that kind of thing, because it comes naturally to you by now. So yeah, I love the game. One that is certainly, going to hit the table a lot for me. I look forward to playing it again several times and trying lots of different strategies with this game. A fantastic game, one that I couldn't recommend enough. So that's my thoughts on Teotihuacan. I really hope you've enjoyed this review. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.